Thank you all for joining. My name is Jim Carroll, and I'm with Advanced Solutions. I'm will wanted to see if I could show myself, but oh, there it is. Thank you all for joining. Today we're going to walk through our FlexMFG Discrete software package. It's designed for both make-to-stock and make-to-order manufacturers, and we're going to focus today on make-to-stock, but we'll also highlight some of the make-to-order features in the product line. So first of all, in terms of our positioning, we feel that we serve about 50% of the market, essentially for companies that don't require full ERP complexity. And we'll mention that in a moment. And then also for people coming off of QuickBooks and maybe they're doing their production scheduling on Excel spreadsheets and the like, or for folks who simply just can't afford expensive manufacturing edition. Our product is integral to the manufacturing distribution edition. So that means that VARs that are familiar with Acumatica, the financial modules, and especially inventory, sales, orders, and purchasing, you'll find that our FlexMFG package, written 100% in Acumatica, integrates extremely well. The secret sauce, if you will, is that we focus on the Acumatica kit. So unlike the Acumatica Manufacturing Edition, which has its own technology and tables associated with the bill of material, we take the Acumatica kit and, if you will, expand that functional suite. We augment that with a work order, and we augment work order with full material requirements planning that interoperates with the Acumatica inventory and purchasing systems. So let's take a look at demand. From a workflow standpoint, we can create a work order that in turn generates the bill of material from either a forecast, we'll demonstrate that, a sales order for make to order, or from a work order itself, as in a master production schedule. The work order itself can consist of unlimited bills of material, and those bills of material can be of unlimited indentures, bombs within bombs within bombs. The items can be serialized, the subcomponents can be serialized, the finished good can be serialized. And each of the bills of material includes both the material itself as well as labor. Those materials and labor tie into the material requirements plan. So I could put together a 6-month plan or a 2-month plan or a 1-year plan, run MRP. It'll aggregate all the demand across multiple items / work orders / bombs and generate purchase order instructions specific to a vendor. So if I've got 15 parts that all go to one vendor and those 15 parts come from a plethora of different work orders, it will aggregate all of those. Upon building the item, I complete the work order. I'll have complete variance to actual comparison for the cost of goods sold, which will include my labor as well as my material. So upper level, that's the product, generates a work order. We also have a schedule board we'll speak about in a moment. Couple notes, the work orders and the bill of material is dynamic. You can modify it in planning, in planned or released states. We talked about MRP, and we talked about the fact that we'll demonstrate to you how we can drive demand from forecasts. Completely 100% integrated with Acumatica. And what does it not do? What it doesn't do is it doesn't incorporate machine setups and queue times and the like. So we're not talking about sophisticated manufacturing where you've got 10-step routers with different machines at each step within the router, and you're setting up work centers and queue times, and they're tied to capacity. You're grabbing the data from that. You've got fixed and variable overhead. We can have routing steps, and those routing steps are tied to either processes and or labor and or both. So it's not that we can't run routers, we certainly can. It's just that we're not talking about machine setups. And let's see, we can enter the labor on the material work on order. And what I'm going to do now is with this, one of the really neat things, and we'll start with this, is our ability to forecast. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jake. Oh, and I was asked if you have any questions, please go into the GoToMeeting panel and ask the questions, and we'll be happy to adjust those. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jake, and we'll get right into our 15, 20-minute presentation on the product.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Jim, I think you're the only person unmuted, so if you could confirm for me that you can see my screen, then I'll keep going.
I can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so we are in my Acumatica instance. We're running a run-of-the-mill distribution edition, but you can see down here on my main menu that we do have the light manufacturing work suite installed here. So where we're going to begin is by taking a look at our bill of materials that we're going to be working with in our production planning step. So I'm going to come into my inquiry called spec component structure. And I am going to be using the language of bill of material, but as Jim indicated before, we are using Acumatica's distribution functionality. So really, we're still operating within the confines of our Acumatica kits. But if you are using Acumatica's kits and you have kits within those kits, I should say, not within those quits, you'll be familiar with the fact that within kit specifications, it's difficult to see sub-assembly components within a larger kit. So what this spec component structure will allow me to do is be able to view my my master kit, and if I have items within that require sub-assembly, then I'll be able to see those subcomponents that make up the entire bill of material as well. So you can see here that we're going to be production planning for not just this kit, but several kits that have BOMs within BOMs. So my basic kit here consists of several kits that require assembly themselves, and you can see them broken down here line by line, indicating which ones are strictly components that will be added and which ones require subassembly and the quantity that will be required for each of those.
And I can see, Jake, that essentially we're a toiletries manufacturer because we're doing shampoo and conditioner and body wash, the kind of things that you might find when you go to a hotel, as an example.
Yes, thank you, Jim. So you can see here, even in our names, we're sort of giving that away. This BP002 kit stands for Beauty Product Kits. And so each of our beauty product kits will be made up of items like shampoo and beauty and cleaning supplies. But maybe within that kit, we'll have something like a conditioner that we might buy in bulk, but then bottle and label ourselves, maybe using some kind of standard label, maybe using a label provided by the customer or that we're printing with the customer's label. Whatever the case may be, we're able to account for using our BOM setup here. But to Jim, to your point, yes, we're looking at this from the perspective of somebody who's manufacturing some kind of beauty product kit here, although that's not the only use case. So the three kits that we're going to be looking at, you can see that from kit 1 to kit 2 that there are some shared components, and from kit 1 and kit 2 to kit 3, each one of these gets a little bit more sophisticated as we go and is a bit longer than the last, but they do share some common components. So between having BOMs within BOMs, between having multi-level BOMs and then sharing common components across multiple kits, I'm sure you can already start to imagine the problems we run into using Acumatica's base distribution inventory replenishment. So having set the stage there by looking at these bill of materials, what we're going to go ahead and do is go into our production planning center and run a forecast to create enough of these kits for, well, first we'll forecast and then we'll decide how many periods we actually want to generate for. So I'm going to create my forecast here, beginning today, running until this time next year. And you can see we have a few other options here. We can define different things like our seasonality, our work calendar. What I want to point out at this top level of the form is our history source. You can see that we can choose either sales or manufacturing as our history source to look back at our historical data for to then forecast out into the future. We can choose manufacturing as an option for items that we have that we assemble but might not sell on their own. So if we need to run a forecast for an item that is only assembled to be included then as part of another kit or as part of another BOM, we can do that using this manufacturing history source. But for today, we're going to be using our sales historical data. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and type in the first of our kits, our beauty product kit number 1. And you'll see here that if I choose my forecast method, and we have a couple of here, including manual, if I wanted to key enter some numbers that I might have ran in a spreadsheet. But if I use my linear regression method and I try to calculate a forecast for my beauty product kit 1, you see that we're actually getting an error here. And to give you a little peek behind the curtain here, the reason we're getting an error is because this kit is an item that we invented in about the last week or so. So we don't have any sales history yet. But that doesn't mean that I can't use this production planning center. What I'm actually going to do instead is take advantage of another key function built within this production planning center. And I'm going to use the ability to use substitute inventory IDs to forecast. So maybe this beauty product kit is going to have similar sales we project to a previous item that we do have good historical data about. So I'm going to use a different item entirely, use that item's sales history to be able to create a forecast for the item that I need to manufacture. And I'm going to do that across several items here. Because I need to be able to see how many of each of these new kits I need to manufacture and what my required materials are to actually manufacture them. So to do that, I'm going to use the substitute inventory ID function. And using this information, now I'll calculate my forecast. And as we...
So in this case, we're taking substitutes to see, given the demand in the past, what the demand in the future or the consumption in the future will be. You could also add 10%, 20% of sales. You could do things like, oh, I'm going to go to a show in Vegas, so I'm going to do a jump and have a special event and add times to that. But the overall idea here is I get my demand and then I can run MRP. And so the sales guy says, hey, I'm going to up sales 20%. And the owner says, how much is this going to cost me? And the answer is, well, to make this, we're going to have to go out and buy $550,000 or $2,045,000 worth of material to make this plant.
Absolutely. And so once we have that information in front of us, we can review here, even though we asked you to define 12 monthly periods down here, you can see that some conditional formatting has kicked in. And before I go ahead and I generate these work orders, if there's something that I might know that the machine doesn't, like Jim was describing, maybe we have some kind of convention coming up and we know that these projections for the month of May not be totally accurate, and I only want to run for April instead of the next calendar year. Instead of generating all of these, I'm going to say, oops. I'm going to place this on hold, and my database is going to fight back on me. And I'll select one period to generate. And we'll see now that we have highlighted just this first period of work orders that we're going to generate. So with this selected, even though I can come back at a later date and generate these future periods, right now I'm only interested in generating work orders for the next month. That's selected. I'm going to go ahead and generate them. And you'll notice once this process finishes running in the background, and I do apologize for these processing times. I've been having some internet connectivity issues today. Once this is done running in the background, you'll see more conditional formatting kick in, and these columns will turn from yellow to green to indicate the fact that we've already generated the work orders for them. So anytime I come back to this production plan in the future and I need to quickly remember what we've already generated, that information will be obvious to me. So with them generated, I can now come over to view all of my production orders. And you'll see that as we forecasted 3 different kit types, we should expect to see 3 new work orders, 3 new work orders, and a planning status. So every work order that comes in and every work order that we generate will come in a planning status, and we'll review some of those other statuses that are available at a later date. So these are the 3 that we've just generated, 1 for each kit that we need to assemble for the month of April. You'll also notice down here at the bottom, as Jim was indicating earlier in his presentation, that we do have the ability to not just generate work orders from a production plan, but we can also link them to a sales order if we were considering a make to order operation as well. So it looks like there are some notes on this work order that the customer might have requested to use their own label rather than whatever comes in more typically. And we can see that if we were to open this work order up and view the kit reference number associated with it, we can see here that it looks like they've substituted out the standard label with that company's own label that we're going to be using for this. So we can dynamically modify these bill of materials as we need to, even on a per order basis, if that was required. But for today, we're primarily looking at our make to stock scenario. So we'll go back to these work orders that we generated based on our production plan and take a look at them. Okay, so now we're looking at one of the individual work orders that we generated for our beauty product kit number 1. We are planning to create 3,022 of these based on our forecasted sales, although this number is dynamic and I can still edit it while it's in a planning status. In addition to being able to edit this planned quantity, you'll see here that I also have the ability to still make changes to my bill of material if I needed to take something off, substitute, or even add another component to this kit. And you can see that we're accounting for labor down here through the use of our non-stock Acumatica items as well. So on an as-needed basis, I can modify my bill of materials to account for changes either materially or as it relates to labor. As changes happen here, either as we record production or as we make changes to what's going to be required, maybe we're adding materials, maybe I'm going to add another labor component, because in addition to putting this together, maybe I'm going to be training a new hire on how to complete this manufacturing as well. So I'm going to add another labor component, and maybe it won't affect the customer's final price, but I want to see the cost that went into it as well. So I can add different labor components, and as I add those things, the actual cost will be updated in our cost tracking tab here. So as we make adjustments from our plan, we'll be able to see actuals and the variances between them. And as those things are recorded, we can continue to monitor the real cost of these kits being completed. And if this was linked to a sales order, like the one we looked at a moment ago, we could use those recalculated costs to actually reprice the sales order, taking into account the real cost behind the item that we're selling, and then including a cost markup to then price the sales order. But once we have thoroughly reviewed this and we've determined that nothing does need to be added or substituted out, we're ready to complete planning this item. I'm going to go ahead and remove it from hold. And then I can do 2 things. First, I can check my inventory. And you'll see here in this column that it's telling me what actions I'm going to need to take in order to fulfill these work orders. For me to create my planned quantity of this kit, I'm going to need this quantity of each of these components. You can see for some of them, we'll be able to begin production taking from inventory, but we're still also going to need to produce some. In this instance, we don't have any inventory on hand, and this is an item that we purchase rather than manufacture. So we're going to have to purchase a full quantity down here. So for each of these items, we're going to have full visibility into whether or not we're going to be able to fulfill completely or partially from inventory. And if we cannot fulfill it from inventory, whether we need to produce or purchase the remaining components. And you'll notice for the ones that are needing to be produced, that once I complete planning on this inventory kit itself, as I complete planning for it, the subcomponents that require subassembly themselves will automatically generate their own work orders and subsequently their own needed components that we'll be able to take a look at as well. Okay, and if I scroll over here, you can see that now that I've completed it, we have our child work orders related to this parent work order that we're going to need to complete before we can complete this master kit. So now, before I run MRP, I'm going to quickly do that with our other two kits with our other two work orders that we created. You can see here that because this is our beauty product kit number 2, it's a little bit lengthier in its BOM, but just like I did before, I'm going to complete my planning and move this into a status of planned. As I do that, all of the subsequent work orders for this item will be created. And again, I do apologize for some of the delays that we're having here. And then for our third kit, which is our longest bill of material with our most components, we will complete planning for this as well. And of course, we have processing centers where we can use all the Acumatica automation tools that you're used to seeing, but for the sake of being able to explore the work orders and be able to highlight the level of detail within them, I am going through one by one. And as this work order is released, or at least as it is finished planning, we'll be able to see, once again, all of the subsequent work orders that will be required to complete prior to finishing this master work order. Okay, so now we can see here all the sub-assemblies that will be required. If we come back to our generic inquiry, we can see that we have much more than just the 3 work orders that we began with. And you can see a good level of detail concerning what is driving these work orders themselves, whether they came from a production plan, whether they came from a sales order, or whether they are linked to a parent work order and our sub-assembly kits themselves. So now you can see that we have upwards of 20 different work orders, all requiring unique components that we're going to have to run MRP for. So now that all of these are created, we know exactly what is going to be required for us to meet our forecasted sales. Now I can come into my production requirements report and production requirements processing screen. If I identify what warehouse I'm in, we'll be able to see all of our planned or released work orders here. And before I do any processing here, first thing I'll do is show us this requirements report. And what this requirements report will do and what these processing functions will do is query all of the needed components across all of these individual work orders, which is what's listed here. We're viewing every open work order in our system, aggregate all the common components across them, and help us to make purchasing suggestions for them. Before I process anything, of course, because this is a generic inquiry built on top of Acumatica, we can use all of the automation tools you'd expect, whether it's an automation schedule, or whether or not it's some of the sorting and filtering options that are available if we only wanted to view and process work orders that are planned before the end of this month or before the end of this quarter, the calendar year, or even the end of this week, we can sort and filter to define this as narrowly as we need to before we do any processing. But for now, we're going to take a look at all of our open work orders across all of our different sources of demand. And I'll run my requirements report so we can see the aggregation that is happening behind the scenes. And our report will look something like this. For each item, we'll see the item listed here, and then we'll see all of the work orders that it is on. All of that will be required to fulfill each of those individual work orders, and then the total work order requirements themselves. By default, this will suggest that we purchase the minimum that's going to be required to fulfill the current open work orders. For these first several that we're looking at, it looks like we have no inventory available of any of them. But if we find some that do have current inventory available, you can see here for our inventory item of our conditioner that we do have some inventory available. So we're going to be able to at least start production on some of these work orders. But in order for us to finish and complete them, we're going to have to make the necessary purchases to do that. So it's taking all of our demand across all of our work orders and giving us one final purchase suggestion for them. So I can either take that information, process it all here, or I could slice and dice using the filtering tools available in Acumatica to narrow my processing here to say the end of the week or to the end of the month. Or a third option would even be to take this requirements report, and now that I know the total quantity I'm going to be needing from each of my vendors for each of these items, considering that it might be an exceptionally large quantity, rather than processing from here, what I might do is just take my requirements report, get a hold of the vendor, and see if I can negotiate a blanket purchase order where I might be able to capitalize on my volume and get the best possible discount, but still release those child purchase orders on an as-needed basis because I'll know exactly when production is going to be scheduled for each of these work orders that are listed here. But just for some proof of concept here, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just process all in mass so we can see that the system is capable of calculating all of the necessary demand and generating a purchase order for that. And looking at the time, Jim, it looks like I've gone longer than I intended to. So as soon as I finish running this process here and show the purchase order that this is going to create, I'm going to go ahead and hand this back over to you and see if there are any questions that have come up yet to this point. And this is now processed. Click on my purchasing workspace. See that we have a newly generated purchase order. See how much it is and all the open quantities on it. And once I receive this purchase order in, we'll be able to release all of our open work orders to production to be able to be completed and moved into inventory. So with that being said, Jim, I'm going to make you presenter once again. And hand it over.
Thanks, Jake. So I had one good job, thank you. Obviously, once the orders are in production, it'll net across incoming sales. The available to promise will provide visibility to the on-hand balances and net against incoming sales and the like, and a full system. Net in terms of our product, we market it for both the small business as well as advanced. It's $3,000 for the small business, 5 to 7 depending upon your resource levels for advanced. Forecasting, we also have a scheduling tool. I just wanted to bring this in quickly. I know we're running out of time, but this represents your work orders on the top and your labor on the bottom. And as you drag and drop the work orders from one period in the future to current periods, it's going to let you know whether or not you've got the material vis-a-vis the technology just displayed by Jake. And then you may have, as an example, small company, 200 units of labor a day. And if you move something back and you exceed that number, you're going to get visibility to the fact that you've got a problem on the labor, and maybe you've got to authorize overtime, or you just can't make that delivery, etc. So the whole idea is to give tools to the smaller firms for a reasonable price. That scheduling tool is an additional $2,000. So overall benefits, about half the price of large full manufacturing, fourth the cost to set up, because our opinion is value-added resellers that understand manufacturing and distribution will easily absorb the setups for this product because it's built off the kit. We think it gives you advantages versus our competition, especially with the forecasting tool and its overall simplicity. And then QuickBooks has things like assembly and Sage and GP, kind of have behind the scenes bills of material, so you don't need full manufacturing. Same concept here. And obviously it's a stepping stone to Acumatica's manufacturing. So I got one question that was more of a personal question from Mike regarding Greg, and I'm trying to answer it, and I don't know, I pushed the button and I don't know how to answer the question, so I apologize. Are there any other questions other than the one regarding an old worker that we used to work with? What we'll do is we'll follow up. We've got Joel and Jolyn and Matthew on the line, Hannah and Iqbal, and we are going to we recorded this, so we'll provide a recording to you. Please contact us at sales@solutionsco.com for any additional information. We've got videos, prices, all data sheets and the like. More than happy to give presentations to you and your team, as well as to any prospects that you may have for our light manufacturing product. So we're on for 11 to 11:30. Thank you so much. It's 11:33. Unless there's any other questions, let me see here. We'll take it from there. So thank you very, very much.